Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to call this stated session of Easton City Council to order. Please rise for the invocation followed by the pledge of the flag. As we begin our meeting, we thank all for the opportunity to serve our residents. We pray for the people of Ukraine today. We pray for peace and the laying down of weapons. We pray for all those who fear for tomorrow, that the spirit of comfort will draw near to them. We pray for those with power over war and peace, for wisdom, discernment, and compassion to guide their decisions. Above all, we pray for the children at risk and in fear, that we would hold them and protect them. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Milan?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Sultana? Here. And Mayor Panto?
Here. I'd like to have approval of the agenda.
Second.
Move to approve in a second. I have an amendment. On the back of on the second page, under letter, I'd like to add letter I. We got notice that the grant for our Vanderveer, which you heard about last night at our committee meeting, the grant has been moved up till April 6th. The deadline, our next meeting until April 13th. So I'd like to put that on the agenda this evening. It was put on the website as well. I'd also like to mention that letter F is a resolution approving the memorandum of agreement with AFSCME 447. AFSCME is, of course, our non-uniform union. We've done this in the past, but we do not have a contract still signed by the union. So I'm going to leave it. I'll leave it on the agenda and leave it up to council to decide what they want to do. Normally, the policy has been that we do not approve anything until we have a signed contract from whether it's a vendor or a union. But we can certainly vote for the memorandum of agreement outlines all the terms, so we can vote for that and bring the contract at a later date. So I would like to make those, one amendment is to add the Vanderveer grant, and Mr. Hopkins is here to address that, and Mr. Mast, also from GEDP, who's a joint applicant for this grant. So I'll move that we add the Vanderveer grant to letter I under new business.
Okay, I need a second for that amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Moved in second. Any further discussion?
Okay, so we're going to vote on the amended agenda. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to vote to amend the agenda by adding a grant agreement for a grant for a resolution for a grant for Vanderveer, and also for the memorandum of an agreement with the 447.
I didn't. The
You
amendment
just
is
mentioned
just,
accurate.
You're just
amendment
mentioning
is
it.
just that we'll address that when we get to it. It's already on the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Panto? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Panto.
I was Mr. First. Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
And Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
And then on the, to approve the amended agenda totally, it was moved by Mr. Brown and then Mr. O'Connell. So the vote on that would be then Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
And Mr. Brown?
Aye. Okay, at this time, we have the action on the minutes of approving our May 9th meeting.
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
And Mr. Ettinger?
Aye. Okay, at this time on our agenda, we're a while yet. We want to add, we'll do your first so that they can leave. So we'll introduce Chief Scalzo, which would normally come under my report, but to get the officer and his family moving along before we get to our public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have a swearing in of Sergeant Eric Campbell. He's going to be promoted to the rank of sergeant. And before we begin, as always, just want to thank Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Administration for all of your support of the department over the years, to credit you with a lot of the success that we've had as a department. and to thank the community and the members in attendance here today for joining us and witnessing this very important event. The requirements and the duties of a law enforcement officer are ever changing, and very often it becomes a thankless job. Make no mistake about it, for the men and women who serve. It is a calling and not just a job. It's a job that's never entered into lightly or not simply because one seeks stability in a career or for a paycheck. The profession, it requires selflessness, dedication, devotion to fellow officers, and to the city. Tonight, we'll be swearing in Sergeant Eric Campbell, who has worked diligently as an officer with the department for the past 16 years. He has earned the trust of the rank and file and will now serve in a leadership capacity to carry the department forward. If I can have Eric Campbell please step forward. Eric Campbell is being promoted to the rank of sergeant while he will serve as a first-line supervisor in the patrol division. Sergeant Campbell began his employment with the City of Easton Police Department in 2006 and has been a dedicated officer during his time with the department. In 2006, Sergeant Campbell was assigned to the patrol division where he worked as a patrol officer and spent 10 years working the night shift. In 2009, Sergeant Campbell was selected to be a field training officer where he was tasked with training the department's newest new officers to prepare them properly for their careers as an Easton police officer. In 2010, Sergeant Campbell became a certified mountain bike officer. Their certification was obtained through extensive training provided by the International Police Officers Mountain Bike Association. In 2013, Sergeant Campbell was certified as a street-level evidence collection technician, where he was trained in evidence collection methods and received a Searchy Field Tech certification. In 2016, Sergeant Campbell was assigned to the Accident Investigation Unit, where he has been on call and inevitably called in to handle numerous fatal and serious vehicle collisions. This division requires extensive and ongoing training in dealing with the reconstruction of motor vehicle accidents. It requires the utilization of complex mathematics. It requires officers to deal with complex crime scenes and testify in court at an expert level. In 2015, Sergeant Campbell joined the Easton Police Department Special Response Unit, where he has performed honorably as an entry operator, a drone operator, and a robot operator. In 2018, Sergeant Campbell was selected to become a sniper, where he is responsible for overwatch of the unit's operations and ultimately their safety while performing their duties. In 2018, Sergeant Campbell was assigned to the motorcycle unit, where he was responsible for traffic enforcement while still performing his primary duties as a patrol officer. Sergeant Campbell also spent many hours involved in community engagement in this capacity, where he used his motorcycle as a tool to better interact with the citizens we serve. Throughout his career, Sergeant Campbell has been recognized with numerous awards and citations. Sergeant Campbell has dedicated over 16 years to the law enforcement profession and to the City of Easton as a police officer. Therefore, tonight I recommend he be promoted to the rank of sergeant to be assigned as a first-line supervisor in the patrol division.
Thank you, Chief. Sergeant Campbell, will come forward. First of all, thank your family for being here to witness this. Your dad is a great addition to and an asset to our police department. You know, I've been reading our police department has done a great job over the last 15 years. They really turned themselves around. It's a pleasure for me, as I said in the opening of my State of the City. When I took off in 2008, it was blood, crips, Latin gangs, and gangs, drug violence, and shootings, and today it's growth and opportunity. So I always thank the police department first, because without a safe city, you don't have a senior city. You have people that are going to invest, right, Mark? Right, Mark? You have people that are going to spend money in city and move their families to our neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are the lifeblood of our city, and our neighborhoods are going downhill. People didn't want to live in our neighborhoods anymore because of the violence. So we have people moving back. So, Sergeant, I thank you for all the work that you've done, especially with the SRU. I can honestly say that the SRU has probably done 50 raids or more since I've been mayor. We've not had one casualty, either the victim or the police officer. And that's remarkable. So thank you, Chief. And Sergeant, raise your right hand. I, Eric Campbell. Do solemnly swear that I'll support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth. That I will enforce the laws of the Commonwealth and the ordinance of Easton. And I will discharge the duties of my office as sergeant with fidelity. And you further swear that I will uphold, obey, and enforce the law without consideration of a person's race, color, sex, religious creed, sexual orientation, age, national origin, ancestry, handicap, or disability. I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I knowingly a member of any organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this Commonwealth by force or violence to deny other persons their rights under the Constitution of the United States and this Commonwealth. I do further swear that I will not so advocate, nor will I knowingly become a member of such organization during the period that I'm employed at Easton, of the city of Easton.
Yeah, it is. This is a copy.
Thank you, sir. My opening remarks, before I get the rest of the council, I do really mean that, my remarks from the bottom of my heart. When I ran in 2007, I wondered why I even did that. I mean, this town was bad. And the police department have done a phenomenal job. And our judges, I see our president judge has entered the chambers, and we get good support from our judges at the county level and our magistrates at the local level. But we really have had success in making our city safe. And every year, but for the 2 homicides that we had last week, that was the first time we had a homicide in 3 years in this city. There's not many cities around here, including Bethlehem. We always think about Bethlehem. Bethlehem has had a lot of trouble. Can say that, and I take each one of those homicides personally. I feel really bad about those, regardless. Those children were 17 and 18, and regardless of what they were doing with their lives and how their lives have gone astray, society failed them. That was the way I look at it. But our police officers, as I said, we do almost an average of 1 or 2 raids a month, and not one victim or police officer has been hurt in over 50 or 60 raids that we've done since I've been in office. And everybody says, well, why do you do all these raids? They get all this bad publicity for City of Easton. That's how we keep people off the streets that are shooters. And that's how we keep drugs off the street. But more importantly, we keep violent people off the street. It's not the drug kings that are doing this drug dealing in the city or killings. It's always their soldiers. And they're the ones we get off the street, and we get guns from them, and we confiscate those weapons, and we're able to make our city safe for our neighbors. People coming to Easton won't come to a city they fear. We have cities that we know are like that. I mean, I am, as I said before, I'm tough on crime. I'm not Mayor Kenny of Philadelphia or his DA that just lets people out. I believe that if you're going to do the crime, you have to do the time. I'm going to help you not to do the crime again. I believe in that. I believe in very much in rehabilitation, but I don't believe that we just let people nilly-willy commit crimes and not have any punishment. And that, I think, has been known in our city, and it's been known that our police are going to be polite but aggressive. They're going to be working with our neighbors. I've watched them get out of their squad cars and play basketball with the kids. I've watched them in school where they take the dog and the kids actually pet the dog, and they get to know the police officer as a person, not just as the guy who puts the shackles on them when they do something wrong. So I don't mean to belabor the point, but I really do have a really good police department. I can tell you that there were times, remember when I took office, the first thing I had to do was settle a $10 million lawsuit. Lawsuits were very common that taxpayers in this city were paying through the nose. We haven't had a major lawsuit in 15 years. And that in itself, yes, we'll knock on wood. And that in itself is good. And you know what's helped? The body camera. So I thank City Council for supporting the purchase of those body cameras. They really come in handy, as the chief will say. And the cameras in the city and those people who have Ring doorbells and everything, we love you. I mean, it's really great because it's not 1984 anymore, but we're still watching. So anyone else up here want to say something about Sergeant? Welcome. It's a good department, as you know. Peter?
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, I can say that I've probably known you for, 26 years, actually, starting at the township. So I consider you a friend and a colleague. And congratulations on your appointment to Sergeant. And thank you for your service to the city, as always. and hopefully you'll continue to keep our city safe and maintain that our police department is probably the top, if not the best in the entire Commonwealth. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for serving for that long, and congratulations for your appointment.
I want to thank you also, but I just want to, I mean, in the chief's remarks, I think the thing that stood out to me was your continued search for getting better and better and better, and certifying and continuing your career. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, and I think that you've demonstrated your eagerness to do that, and I'm sure that going forward you're going to be a great sergeant out there in the field, and congratulations.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, I'd just like to congratulate you, first of all, for your promotion, well deserved. The other thing I wanted to say is that you bring a lot of knowledge and experience. And I know that the younger officers are probably looking up to you as a person that they will aspire to be like. So, in that, congratulations, and also congratulations to your family. Thank you.
Sergeant, I just want to say congratulations on your promotion, and I wish you the very best. And city's very proud of you. You're just another part of a great police force, and we're all very happy for you and very proud.
Sergeant, congratulations on the promotion. The list of platitudes that were being read off by the chief was quite impressive. I didn't even know most of that, but I'm confident that if you had a hand in training the new officers as they come up, that it's been done right. If they're anything like you at all, we're in good hands. Thank you again.
Again, Chief, you have anything, closing remarks?
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much. We appreciate all the kind
Thanks,
words.
Chief.
Thank you.
We're moving on to number 7 on our agenda is the certificate of appropriateness for 32 to 42 South 6th Street, demolition of a garage, A&R development versus the city of Easton. Mr. Scheer, I'd like you to introduce this topic.
Thank you, Mayor. For background of City Council and also for the public who may not have been here, several months ago, at least several months ago, there were 2 issues involving this project at 34-42 South 6th Street. We've taken the whole project where A&R Roman numeral 7 LLC as the developer and applicant sought certificates of appropriateness and went through the Historic District Commission. The Historic District Commission had granted or recommended a certificate of appropriateness with respect to the demolition of a garage. It had also recommended against a certificate of appropriateness for the larger project itself. City Council basically accepted the recommendation of the HDC with respect to the larger project, but reversed did not accept, that's the proper terminology, did not accept the recommendation of the HDC and voted against granting the COA for the demolition of the garage. The applicant then filed a timely appeal under the local agency law to the Court of Common Pleas, and one of the things that we recognize, this is a very rare occurrence as a city council. Frankly, if it's to become a common occurrence, we're going to have to figure out a better procedure because we don't fund this. We don't have funds necessarily for a stenographer who we have here tonight, because anything that is subject to a hearing and a disposition would typically require a formal adjudication and a full record to be before the board, before the Court of Common Pleas. The practical result was that it went up to Common Pleas. Mr. Clark, through the solicitor's office, entered an appearance, and through discussions, because we realized there was not a record, stipulation was reached to remand the entire matter back to City Council. Furthermore, council has agreed that this will be heard de novo. One of the things, which means you'll hear the evidence and you can make a new decision. The last time we were here, the applicant was not present. And so tonight, I believe the applicant's here, and Mr. Clark sent notice out to those people who had appeared last time, so they were aware of tonight's hearing, and I believe they and perhaps additional people are here. In that regard, I've circulated a pad with a pen asking anybody who wishes to speak to write their name and their address, the purpose being that we will then give that to the stenographer, and when you go to speak, it'll be easier to recognize that the person has, in fact, signed in for purposes of speaking. With respect to the ultimate decision of City Council, where you're governed by our Historic District Ordinance, and under that ordinance, there's basically going to be two choices. You either can accept the recommendation and approve the granting of the COA, or you can disapprove it. However, under Section 318-11K, disapproval by Easton City Council requires a written reasons that will be given to the code administrator, the applicant, and the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission that would include what changes in the plans and specifications would meet the conditions for protecting the distinctive historical character of the district and the architectural integrity of the building or structure. Now, the thing that's unusual here, we're talking about demolishing a building, but the bottom line is that if you are going to disapprove this, there needs to be reasons as to why this should be otherwise protected under our Historic District Ordinance. So there are these specific parameters that will need to be followed. As far as the procedure goes, Mr. Clark is actually going to act as your, I won't call it hearing officer because you are the hearing body, but to help guide if there's any questions or just basically procedural decisions that may have to be made along the way. The applicant will make its presentation first as to why they believe a COA should be granted. City Council members will then have the opportunity to ask any questions of the applicant and their witnesses, depending on how they elect to present this. And at the conclusion of my comments, Mr. Clark will advise what goes into the record, but then we'll have Stephanie Cobles, the attorney for the applicant, who will then advise what her case will consist of as far as whether it's one or two witnesses, just so you have an idea of what the presentation will be. Thereafter, after you're finished with your questions, members of the public will be able to make their statements, comments, and if there's specific questions germane to this very limited issue, the applicant can answer those, can be asked to answer those questions. And then we'll have our record made, but then you'll get to vote, and your votes can be, to reject it, in which case there should be some deliberation and reasoning so that Mr. Clark knows how to put an adjudication together, or you'll say the COA, based on, again, this very limited area and limited issue, should be granted per the recommendation, and then there's nothing to do but a resolution, as the normal resolution that actually was in the packet several months ago.
Limited issue here is only the garage.
It's only the garage. The other issue was not appealed.
Joel, before you continue, can I ask
Yes.
a question, please? Do you think it'd be prudent to have the Director of Code Enforcement here to offer testimony?
The Director of Code Enforcement does not get involved with the recommendation. The recommendation, it was from we have a consultant, and you have, as part of the record, her write-up and her reasoning. And I believe Mr. Clark is saying that was in your packet. It's not. I don't have that in what I downloaded.
In the packet, but I did see it. I don't know if City Council got it.
Oh, you were asking. Okay, it should be part of the record, though. It would have been part of the original packet.
It was part of the HDC packet.
Yeah.
Joe, before we go any further, I would like to have this mic taken care of. I don't have it.
It's on.
I know.
They're all on.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
And I also want to remind the public that when you come up to the podium to speak, you're going to give your name, your address, and please speak into the microphone because this also is being put out through our website, and also it makes it easier for the stenographer to hear you. Okay, turn it over to Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have too much to add to the introduction of Attorney Shear, other than I've already marked the documents that are part of Council's packet as a City Exhibit 1, and that will be part of the record that's presented here as in addition to any other exhibits that are offered by the applicant. With that, I would ask Council for the applicant, Attorney Coble, there you are. Council, how many witnesses do you intend to call?
3 this evening.
3, okay. Can we have the witnesses sworn as a group? Do we want to do?
And also, anyone else that wishes to address this tonight needs to stand as well.
Yes, that's what I was just asking.
Swear them all in.
Anyone who's intending to testify or ask questions about this, please stand and be sworn at this time. Even if you're contemplating it, you don't have to. Doesn't mean you have to testify later.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony which you shall give in the matter now before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Do you so swear?
Okay.
Thank you all. You may be seated.
Yes. Well, and again, before we get started, I want the applicant to understand as well as the public to understand that the issue that's presently before City Council is strictly limited to the demolition of an existing structure, namely a garage located on the premises. As I understand it, the building construction itself, the development of the site, is back for revision and will be presented to Historic District Commission at a later date.
That is correct.
Okay. With that, Council,
If I may I approach the
Cer-
council,
certainly.
the mayor, and provide our exhibit?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Panto, City Council, thank you. My name is Stephanie Coble. I'm from the law offices of Fitzpatrick, Lentz, and Buba, and I represent the applicant and our development company. With me tonight are 3 witnesses: Monty Colsey, who is the applicant and owner of the subject properties; Greg Knoll, a surveyor from Valley Land Services; and Jeff Martinson from the Martinson Group, LLC. As you're all aware, this project is located at 34 to 42 South 6th Street within the city of Easton. The property is part of the downtown zoning district and is within the historic district. The property is owned by ANR 7 LLC, as evidenced by the deeds which are in your packet and marked as Exhibit A1. The applicant is here, as was mentioned earlier, on one singular issue tonight: a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of a 1-story cinder block garage at the rear of one of the tracks. We are not here tonight on the entirety of the project. In fact, we will need to reappear before the Historic District Commission and this council on the other portions of this project. I have included a copy of the original application to the HDC, and that's in your packets marked as Exhibit A2. I only include that, well, that includes more than what we're here for tonight. It does include the original application for what we're here for tonight. On October 11th, 2021, we appeared before the Historic District Commission. At that meeting, the Historic District Commission recommended a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the subject 1-story garage and deemed that that garage was not a contributing building in the historic district. A copy of those meeting minutes is in your packets and marked as Exhibit A3. Attorney Shear went through the procedural history of this, so I'm not going to rehash that at this point. The testimony this evening will be presented by my 3 witnesses, and it will establish that the applicant is entitled to the certificate of appropriateness to demolish the garage, which, as the testimony will show, I know there was some ambiguity to this last time, is in fact located wholly on my client's property. The witnesses will each testify on different aspects of the project and different criteria for the certificate of appropriateness. As such, I would ask the council's indulgence, rather, that I could get through my 3 witnesses, because too often I find that one witness goes and you have questions that the second or third witness is going to testify to. So with that, I would like to call Monty Calcy.
Louis, Mr. Campos, you want to give her that microphone and will it reach?
I'm gonna leave this for you. Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. Mr. Calcy, can you please state your name for the record?
Monty Calcy,
And can you state your address, please?
2180 Spyglass Hill, Center Valley, PA 18034.
And how are you affiliated with the applicant and the owner tonight?
I'm the president of the company and the owner of the property.
And do you own 34 to 42 South 6th Street?
Yes,
And have you taken title to them within the past 6 months or so?
yes,
Do you own the property on which the garage is located?
yes,
And are you familiar with this property that's the subject of the application in the surrounding area?
very well.
Have you been to the site recently?
Yes,
And as the owner of the property, do you have any knowledge that this garage is tied to any historic events or that there were any historic significant tied to this garage?
not at all. Actually, it's in a very bad shape right now.
And from the front of the property, South 6th Street, which is the public street, can you see this garage?
Not really.
And in fact, is the garage located along the rear of the property?
Yes,
I have nothing further for the owner. At this time, I'd like to call Greg Knoll. Can you please state your name for the record?
Greg Knoll.
And Mr. Knoll, who employs you?
I work for Valley Land Services.
And what position are you in?
I am the director of surveys for that company.
And can you give the board a brief history of your education?
Sure. I graduated from Kutztown University in 1987. I started my surveying career working summers from 82 on. Really liked the profession, so I got a job working for a surveying firm and an engineering firm after college. Worked my way up and sat for and took my surveyor's license for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in 2003 and got my license in 2004. Since then, I moved on to another company. I also acquired my license in the state of New York. So I moved on to another company, Valley Land Services, that does work in other states, in 7 states on the East Coast here. And I am now the director of surveys of that company.
And are you a professional land surveyor within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Knoll, I'd like you to turn to Exhibit A4 at this time. It's tab 4 in your packet.
Okay.
Is this a true and correct copy of your resume?
Yes, it is.
Have you in the past ever been qualified as a professional, as an expert in land surveying?
Yes, I have.
At this time, I would like to move the council to deem this witness an expert in land surveying.
So, council members, what's being sought here is does the council deem this person as qualified to speak as an expert under the rules of evidence? If at the point, if there are questions that council or Attorney Scheer has about the witness's credentials alone as to whether or not he should be qualified as an expert, that would be the time to ask those.
And if I may, I would suggest that unless there is a reason to question it, I've known Mr. Knoll, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he is qualified to do surveys.
Don't hurt his chances.
Okay. I'm not giving him a rating of 1 to 5. I'm just saying that I know
I
he's
would
been a
move
licensed
that, I would move
surveyor.
that we accept him as an expert witness.
Second.
Any other discussion on city council? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so the witness will be admitted as an expert in land surveying.
Thank you. Mr. Knoll, are you familiar with the subject property?
Yes, I am.
And did you prepare a survey of the subject property?
Yes, I did.
I would like to turn the board's attention and your attention to Exhibit A5, tab 5 in your binders. Is that a true and correct copy of the survey that you prepared?
Yes, it is.
If you would please, can you point out for council the location of the garage at issue?
Sure. I have an exhibit here, if I may.
And just for the record, can I just ask you, is that just a blown up larger exhibit of what is contained in A5?
Yes, it is, and you can see the seal and the date matches.
Thank you.
The garage in question is right here, and it is 0.8 of a foot entirely on our property, away from the property line, which is 9 inches and 5/8, 9 and 5/8 inches. This is a fairly simple survey in that there's party walls up and down the block. We surveyed the whole block. There's no issues here that made this difficult or made my decisions difficult. It's pretty easy. We respected the party walls on this side, that side. We respected the right-of-ways of the streets, and the garage, in my professional opinion, is entirely on A&R property.
Mr. Knoll, I just want to confirm for the record. So in your expert opinion as a professional land surveyor, you can confirm that the garage is in fact entirely on the property owned by the applicant,
Yes.
and it does not encroach on any neighbor's property.
No, it does not.
And can you also confirm that this garage is along the rear property line?
Yes, it is.
Is the garage visible from South 6th Street?
No, it's not.
I have nothing further for Mr. Knoll. Mr. Knoll will, however, remain available for questions should council have them. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Martinson. Mr. Martinson, can you state your name for the record?
Jeffrey C. Martinson, Martinson.
And who employs you?
Self-employed,
By?
the Martinson Group, LLC.
Thank you. How long have, and what capacity are you self-employed by the Martinson Group LLC?
I'm a professional architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
And how long have you been an architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I've been a professional architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for 37 years.
And can you give council a brief history of your education and certifications, please?
I have an undergraduate degree from Miami University, Bachelor of Environmental Design, and I have a graduate degree from Columbia University, Master of Science in Historic Preservation.
And approximately how many hearings have you testified at as a professional architect?
I can't quantify a number, I'm sorry.
Mark, we're gonna have to ask you to sit down because the stenographer can't hear two people.
But it's safe to say it's been
Numerous.
a large number of
Correct.
hearings.
Correct.
And Mr. Martinson, can you give the council some examples of your work within the city of Easton?
Well, the council may or may not remember that I was one of the original members of the Historic District Commission in downtown Easton here, the only commission. And actually, I was chairman of that commission for a while. So I'm intimately familiar with the rules, the regulations, the dialogue with the community, the review of plans, and development. I have been part of a lot of projects in the city, College Hill, in all the neighborhoods, all the South Side, West Ward, College Hill, downtown, and I'm intimately familiar with a lot of buildings, and I give a lot of time and energy to the revitalization that the mayor spoke about earlier on.
And Mr. Martinson, have you in the past been qualified as an expert?
Yes, I have.
In fact, were you qualified as an expert before the zoning hearing board of the city?
Yes, I was.
At this time, I would like to move to have council deem the witness as an expert in the field of architecture.
So, council, same procedure as before. If anyone has questions to this witness regarding his credentials, that would be the time to ask those questions.
No questions at all from me, so if anyone else has any? Mr. Martinson has been a valued architect in our city and has a good record.
So we'll need a motion and
So I'll
approval by the
move that
board.
we
council.
accept him as a expert witness.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Okay, so the witness will be admitted as an expert in the Historic District Commission.
Thank you. I said thank you few moments too soon. Sorry about that. Mr. Martinson, can you confirm that you are familiar with the subject property and the surrounding area?
I am intimately familiar with this parcel and with many parcels in and around this parcel.
Have you been hired as the architect for this project?
Yes, I have.
Were you present at the HDC meeting on October 11th, 2021?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall the HDC unanimously recommending the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of this garage?
Yes, I specifically asked that it be voted on individually.
Mr. Martinson, I'd like to draw your attention to page 3 of Exhibit A3. It's tab 3 under City Council's binders.
Okay.
Page 3 of that?
Yes.
And
Okay.
page 3.
Okay.
Do you see the heading that says second motion?
Yes.
Can you please read to the board the lines of text under that heading?
Item 1, the proposal to demolish the garage at 34 to 42 South 6th Street was presented by Jeff Martinson. Number 2, the existing garage on the site may be demolished as proposed. Number 3, the garage is not a contributing building in the historic district. The proposed work was unanimously approved.
Mr. Martinson, as an architect in the city, are you familiar with the City of Easton's historic district design guidelines?
Yes.
Moving forward, I'm just going to call them the guidelines. Can you confirm that the garage is a secondary facade in that it is not highly visible from a primary or major street?
That's correct.
And under the guidelines which you testified you're familiar to, are secondary facades subject to less scrutiny under the city's guidelines than primary or front-facing facades?
That's correct.
Mr. Martinson, under the guidelines that you testified that you're familiar with, secondary structures are only required to be reviewed by the HDC if they are visible from a public right-of-way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So technically, the demolition of this garage was not even necessarily required to be reviewed by the HDC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As part of your role as architect, are you familiar with the garage at issue?
Excuse
Are
me.
you familiar with the garage at issue?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Martinson, I'd like to turn your and the council's attention to Exhibit A6.
Okay.
There should be 3 photos there.
Mhm.
Are those true and accurate representations of what the garage looks like?
Yes.
Can you describe the garage for the council?
Actually, the last picture is, to me, the most poignant because it is the only view of this structure from a public right-of-way. The streets surrounding this parcel were abandoned by the city. The access point to the rear of this parcel is a private driveway or a private way. And what we see here is actually cinder block exposed, unpainted, with mortar missing, vinyl siding over the top of the garage door. A deflected lintel over the top of the garage door opening, indicating its structural unsoundness, and a vinyl 5-section overhead garage door.
Mr. Martinson, as an expert in architecture, does this garage have broad historic value?
None whatsoever.
Why not?
It's a utilitarian building that has no contribution to the significance of the Easton Downtown Historic District.
As an expert in architecture, does this garage have a relationship to the historic nature of the area?
None whatsoever.
And is that statement based on what you just testified to?
Yes.
As an expert in architecture, does this garage exhibit architecture that is representative of a significant historic period?
None whatsoever.
As an expert in architecture, will the demolition of this garage affect a change upon the historic nature and/or architecture of this district?
None whatsoever.
Mr. Martinson, are you aware that this garage is tied to any historic events or that anything historically significant happened in this garage?
None whatsoever.
I have no further questions for Mr. Martinson on the garage. At this time, I would like to move for the admission of my exhibits.
Okay, the exhibits will be accepted into evidence, and they've already been previously marked. I just would like to take a brief opportunity rather, to speak with council and as also the members of the public regarding the scope of the council's review of this matter. There's been a lot of discussion regarding the property lines and the location of this garage. And I understand that that may be an issue that was raised previously. I wasn't at the last city council meeting when this was originally brought to the council's attention. But this matters before council strictly on the interpretation and application of the historic district ordinance. As any complaints about the location of this garage regarding property lines and upon whose property this garage actually rests, there's other remedies at law available to that property owner who believes they may be aggrieved. It would be before a court probably between the county court. It would be raised by the property owner who believes that the garage is on their property. That is not really an issue for the board to consider, or the council to consider. The issue for the council to consider at this point is whether or not you agree with the Historic District Commission's recommendation that this building is not historical itself, nor does it contribute to the overall design, character, and historical nature of Easton as a whole. So with that little preparatory remark out of the way, at this point I'll turn it over to the council to ask any questions of any of the witnesses.
Since this building was not even subject to review by the
That's-
Historic
that-
District Commission.
I would debate that.
Yeah.
I would only debate that since it is seen from Pine Street, which is a street. And Learn Street may be a private street, but Pine Street is still public.
Mayor, can we let him ask the question though?
Yeah, he would.
All right, yeah. Well,
That's the question. No, we
my
can
question
debate
is, why was it reviewed if it was not subject to review? And why would we even be having this discussion
Well,
if it wasn't reviewed?
obviously, the Historic District Commission believed it was subject for review, and that's why it was presented. So I don't believe the witness's testimony that it's not subject to review. That's certainly not binding upon this council. So I believe the matter is properly before council, and that the issue, rather the application, it was appropriate. And so we can dispose of that argument immediately.
It wasn't an argument, it was just a question.
No, I mean, that argument that may have been raised by the applicant, I don't know. But I believe that line of testimony was not correct, in that the application was proper before the HDC.
Okay. Dr. Ruggles.
For Mr. Knoll, could you just describe what you used as control for your survey?
Sure, we tie into every job we do, we shoot with GPS and we geo-reference it. So it's tied in the latitude, longitude, and state plane coordinate system, PA South Zone. Then what holds in a boundary survey like this, we do a block survey. So we tie into the curbing and we do what's called curb splits. We got the right-of-way maps and the right-of-way widths from the city of Easton. We applied them. We plotted up all the deeds on the block, and Although there were no iron pins or concrete monuments, which you might find in a rural survey, on a survey like this, there were party walls on either side of the property. Those party walls hold as the property line. They matched within tolerance with the curb splits and the
And what was that tolerance?
less than 2/10, less than an inch.
Well, 2/10 is more than an inch.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. It was less than 2.5 inches. But curb waves in and out.
Well, I
Typically,
understand. We were talking about a fairly 8-inch distance from the garage from the wall, and I just wanted to get some idea of the accuracy. That's all. Thank you.
Sure.
This question may be answered by either the owner of the property and or the attorney itself. Prior to it coming to council, was that property line discovered, or has it had been discovered after the?
I can actually answer that. Mr. Colsey, in doing the land development plans, had utilized a survey, so that property line was known long before, I think it was known with the land development. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
Monty?
We called out the survey before we submitted for land development plans.
Just another just another fact that we discussed actually at the last time when this was presented. This project apparently was before the Planning Commission before this came up. It was one of the meetings that I had not attended, so I wasn't familiar with the project. So issues such as boundary lines actually are part of the consideration that our city code office would normally be reviewing if there was anything, at least, I mean, people make mistakes, but at least it was accepted for what it was, as it was presented. Because remember, we have multiple stages here. We have planning, because it's a major land development. We had zoning involved, and my understanding is that at some point there was an appeal filed, and that may be still pending. And we now have the historic district. We have 3 levels. When you're within the local historic district, you're going to have, for land development planning, you may have zoning unless it's an as-of-right application. And finally, we have this last layer of the HDC within the limited areas that HDC looks at and rules on. But I think that's an important historical aspect to keep in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. Anyone else from council? Questions for either of the witnesses before we open it up to the public?
Okay, if that concludes council's questions, at this point, we'll move to questions and statements from the public. I would ask that we, one at a time at the podium, for the clarity of the record, please state your name, and if you would also agree to spell your last name, that is helpful as well, and to give your address. We can confirm then that everyone's signed in at the sheet at that time as well. If you haven't signed in, we'll ask you to do that. Please make your statement as concisely as possible. Ask questions that you may have of any of the witnesses that are there. And I will entertain if there are objections or questions that come to you, we can handle that in course. Okay? So whoever would like to go first, step up to the podium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Calafatello. I live at 240 Skyline Drive in Easton, and I would like to establish myself as an expert in the historical district of Easton. Calafatello.
Thank you.
I currently have interests, or have
I would-
sold between 4 and 5. I request the same respect that you were given, which is to wait till I'm done, ma'am.
Well, you asked to be admitted as an expert, sir. So I think
Great, so can I give
Yes.
my reasons first?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you to do. Right.
Thank
Okay,
you
I
very
wasn't sure
much.
where you're going. Yes,
Appreciate the respect.
please state your. Do you have a copy of your CV or your
No, I do
resume?
not.
Okay, that's fine then. If you could please provide that in your testimony to council.
Certainly.
And then we will move the next step.
Certainly. I've been involved with and currently own between $4 and $5 million worth of real estate in the historical district. I've been before the HDC over 10 times. I've received awards from Sal for my work. I am intimately aware, being a builder, developer, landlord, of what is entailed with the historical district. As such, having done that for years in Easton and been part of its development, I absolutely consider myself an expert in the historical district and the HDC process.
Is that the conclusion of your testimony?
Certainly.
Okay, at this point, counsel, would you like to voir dire the witness on
I would,
expert
thank
credentials?
you.
You may, counsel.
Can you give the board a brief background in your history, in your education history, please?
Has no relationship to my knowledge of the HDC and of building in Easton.
But actually, sir, to be considered an expert under the Pennsylvania Rules of Civil Procedure, your educational background in the field in which you're looking to be deemed an expert is relevant. So I would ask again that you please give your educational background. And again, this does not mean you're not knowledgeable about the HDC, but to be qualified as an expert, it is relevant.
Great. I have a college education. I have executed 7 projects with architects, building departments, HDC in Easton. I've owned 4 different companies in my life. What else would you like to know?
Where did you get your college degree, and what is your college degree in?
I got my college degree at SUNY Oneonta, and I have a degree in psychology and a minor in business.
Do you have any degrees in civil engineering, architecture, historical preservation, anything of that nature?
No, I have life experience.
If I may, maybe I'll make things easier, but it's up to the witness to see if he'll agree. This isn't ultimately the decision as to whether this fits within the HDC, within the Historic District Ordinance or not, is for the City Council. The actual qualifying of an expert in that area, as Mr. Martinson Mr. Martins was recognized that he's an expert in architecture, not necessarily in how you interpret the the Historic District Ordinance, HDO. That's your decision. And therefore, it's only a matter of what weight City Council gives. Your background, what you're about to we're testifying to and can continue to testify to, your familiarity with the ordinance, your ownership, your standing because you own buildings nearby, and I only say that, you have to say it so it's in the record, but you said that when you were here the last time, so I'm familiar with that. All that can carry weight to City Council, really as much as Mr. Martinson's testimony would carry weight. Ultimately, the important evidence is going to be how does it meet the various criteria that you've already heard about. But I don't think, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think you need to be qualified as an expert on these issues to have the same weight as a witness as someone who I'm assuming is testifying in opposition of this COA. Because I don't know, actually I don't know that. We've just invited the public to speak, and any member of the public could be coming up here and speaking in favor of this. So does that help, or you really want a ruling on that?
The ruling would be on my expertise and experience.
There is no such category.
Fine. Then I just want to be clarified, having gone before HDC and variance where I was discredited and told that I had no standing, that I want to establish my credentials and my standing before I reference my positions.
I
think we've done that.
I'll turn it. Yeah, I think so.
Well, you own buildings in the vicinity of the proposed location?
I own 6 buildings within stone's throw.
Okay, I think that satisfies the standing requirement. Council, would you agree?
Thank you.
I actually did not agree at zoning for a zoning specific reason. And my question to this witness tonight would be, I would just ask for clarification on how the demolition of this singular garage, because that's all we're here for tonight, specifically impacts you.
That is not a fair
Yeah, I don't-
question. The questioning that is in place at this moment is whether I'm qualified as an
Well-
expert, so I
Well,
disagree with the question.
Well, I
Well,
believe
we
we've
disposed
moved
of
on
that.
from the expert question.
Great, so
I-
then I would appreciate making my statement without being interrupted.
No, that's fine, sir.
Great,
But
thanks.
we're just trying to get through these procedural
I understand.
hurdles, and
yeah.
they're onerous and
Yes.
can be frustrating. But we will need to make sure we do them correctly because we're making a record, and if anyone files an appeal, we want to make sure the record is established and is clear. So, sir, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm willing to advise counsel on this, if you have property that's located within the vicinity, as you said, a stone's throw, which is, can you give me a distance, sir?
10 feet?
Okay, so within 10 feet of the proposed demolition, I believe that qualifies him to testify about the
Clarified,
proposed-
not the demolition, the overall development.
of the property line.
Yes,
I think that
of the overall property, project.
I just
Mr. O'Connor.
wanted to make a statement. Mr. Calafatello has testified before council previously,
right.
and we always considered him very knowledgeable and expert in his testimony then. I think we ought to do the same thing now.
I would agree, and the only thing with the expert, would request to be admitted as an expert kind of threw everybody off a little bit initially. I don't think he needs to, and I think as long as he establishes that he has buildings that are located that close to the property at question, he has standing to be before council on this matter.
And my objection this evening was to him requesting to be an expert, but since we have disposed of that, I think we can move forward.
Right, because I think the issue is the criteria that city council ultimately has to consider, and anybody from the public who wishes to testify, keeping within the focus of that area, is welcome to testify.
So, council, your objection is withdrawn?
My objection to standing is withdrawn.
Okay.
But to the extent he refers to himself as an expert, that will continue.
That's a matter of, that's all a matter of weight. That's all it is. It's up to city council to consider how much weight you give to any of these witnesses.
I think to concur with Mr. O'Connell's comments, I think we can move on from that.
Yeah.
So,
Sir, you can.
Thank you very much.
Certainly.
I'd like to start by clarifying that there are two public streets from which this garage is visible. So if experts are going to make statements, I appreciate if they're correct. Pine Street and Sebring Street are both public streets, and the proposed demolition is visible from both streets.
What's the second street?
Sebring,
Oh, okay.
which is a public street. So I take offense at people standing up and saying they're experts and not being thorough. So there are two streets. So that clearly makes that garage a requirement for HDC's review. Having been before HDC over 10 times, I will tell you that they are meticulous to the level of a window that can be repaired, must be repaired, versus being replaced, excuse me. So the idea that this garage is not significant or that it is not contributing doesn't hold water, because it is visible from two streets. We are all in the middle of a parking nightmare, and a garage on a home that is visible from two streets is contributing, and it does require HDC. And if I have to be held to a level where a window, even if it is single pane, must be restored versus replaced, then that level of conversation, which is what HDC is about, preservation, restoration, not demolition.
Is your window in a building or a accessory structure?
I don't have accessory structures, I have buildings.
Okay, so it's in a historic building that does have significance.
There has never been a conversation for me at HDC about whether a building is significant or not.
can we,
Our decision is only based on whether that garage has actually a historic district. The historic district has made a ruling that it doesn't. and they're looking to city council as a recommendation, do we or do we not? We don't, I mean, I understand you may have frustration about developing in a historic district, but
I
you've done a
don't.
great
I've
job.
actually honored
Yeah, actually, you've done a
every
great
line
job.
of
You've got,
the code.
Jeremy,
I apologize.
Mr. Clark, can I interrupt for a second, please? Can we let the witness just finish his testimony, then we can question him?
I'm here to answer questions.
I know, but he's testifying now. Let him present his testimony, then we can ask him questions.
Great.
Just for clarity, that's all.
Again, I'll state this for everyone because this might be an issue ongoing. We have a court reporter here. She can only write down what one person says at a time. So even if you know where the question is going, let the person finish asking the question before you answer, so that we don't get into
And Jeremy, just for clarification, we're only looking at the factual of that garage.
Great. So I'm here tonight because I was also a recipient of a lawsuit from A&R about this project. And I know that you were also filed with a lawsuit. So I ask you, as a member of the town, when there is public resistance to a project and a developer can litigate to pressure the city to bend the rules or to not follow the same mandate,
Object to
I am
that.
still speaking, on everyone's behalf, then that causes me concern. And if I'm encouraged to come and speak and contribute to the town, and my contributions and my opinions expose me to litigation, then how am I supposed to comfortably participate in the growth of this town? I'm here tonight because I believe that the entire project, which was off topic now, has been handled in a way that is not consistent with the way I've dealt with the city and the way the city has dealt with me. And I am here to shine light on that. And in the process of shining light on that, I've been exposed to litigation. I've been disrespected by this woman on a repeated basis at hearings. And the only place I have had a fair shake is in front of you folks. At every other council, we were not treated well. So I know that the future of Easton is about a community that includes all of us. And if a developer from out of the area can come in and intimidate people who want to preserve the integrity of the rules that we established, and they're able to steamroll that over, well, I'm afraid that that's a line that can't be crossed. And I really believe that's what's going on now. And I'm concerned. Yes, it's a cinder block garage, but where does it end? If it's historical and it can be restored, or you've seen on my projects, improved because they were built before HDC existed, well, it's still there. And the role and the goal is to improve, not tear down. And I encourage you to recognize that developers coming into Easton who are using litigation to push things through does not create the future that any of us want. And I thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate how annoying, difficult, financially exposed this issue is. But this is the line in the sand for me, and this project needs to follow the regulations and the rules that you set forth for all of us, whether we can afford to hire lawyers and litigate you or not. It should not change the way things are done. And my concern is that the pressure that's being exhibited is creating an exception that goes against all of the reasons I'm in this town and all the reasons that I've put my life savings into this town. And I hope you recognize that once you cross that line, you're opening a door. So it is significant, it is contributing, it has 2 public streets, it can be restored, it should be restored, and if anything, the demand should be that it be upgraded to honor the historical, not removed. Thank you.
I would just like to put my objection on the record to the last half of that testimony, and I would also ask the council's indulgence to ask some questions about the so-called litigation that my client allegedly filed against him.
Well, I don't want to go down any matters that aren't relevant. Your objection to relevance and perhaps the argumentative and to other rules of evidence there were noted, and if there's an appeal that comes up, that obviously the court can address that at that time, I believe. The relevant portions of the testimony of this witness are strictly to the garage itself and the historic nature of the garage. Does counsel have any questions of this witness regarding his knowledge of the garage and the historic nature, or the nature in which manner in which that garage contributes to the nature of the community?
I think the elephant in the room is not the garage.
Thank you.
I think the elephant in the room is that they want to keep the garage up so that they control the housing development that's going to take place. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to make a decision whether the Historic District Commission's recommendation to this council is that that's insignificant, has no historical value. As a person who values this history of this city more than anyone else, and I taught it for 12 years, this city is an evolving city that's going to be here 1,000 years from now. I'm not. And the buildings that are here, we're going to protect those that we can protect. But this building is not the subject tonight. And as they come up, and Mark has done a great job, and as a matter of fact, the one on Bushkill Street is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's beautiful. But that has no bearing on what I have been on record as opposing A&R's development on 6th Street. I'm on record. It's not for that neighborhood. That is a neighborhood. It's not the downtown. It's not even, it should be its own historic district because it's different than the downtown. It's not commercial at all. And I'm on record of being opposed to it. However, I am not at this point opposed to a demolition of a structure that to me has no historical significance.
And it is important that we keep those two issues separate.
But it's the elephant in the room. And I see, but some of the things that Mark was saying, obviously we're leaning towards.
Right.
If we keep that, we can control the other phase 2. And I don't want to get the two mixed up either.
Does any member of council have questions of this witness? Council, do you have questions of the witness pertaining to the historic nature of the garage itself?
No questions pertaining to the historic nature of the garage.
Thank you. Sir, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would anyone else care to address council on this matter? Yes, please.
Hello, my name's Kira Buxton. I am the owner of the property adjacent to the lots we're discussing tonight. My address is 32 South 6th Street, Easton, PA. And the spelling of my name is K-I-R-A. B as in boy, U-X, like X-ray, T-O-N. Yep, you got it. Thank you. All right, so the developer's making a case about the garage tonight, but I want to raise the matter of the joint wall on my property that is attached to that garage and will be affected by the demolition of that garage. I only found out about this demolition due to a zoning ordinance letter that I received a few months ago, so this all came as a surprise to me, and I had to pay out of pocket for my own survey, which has just been handed out to you by my fiance. And that yellow line there illustrates the joint property line that is in discussion tonight. Now, towards the right side of that paper, you'll see the garage in question. I spoke to my surveyor, and he clearly stated that, yes, I do not own the garage, but I do own the wall that is highlighted by the pink line on the second photo that you've received tonight. I would like to ask tonight how that garage is going to be demolished without damage to my property, and how the structure that is clearly implied as following this demolition, aka the apartment buildings we've just referenced, thank you, Mayor Panto, is not going to affect my historic home. As Mark stated, I have, as a private homeowner, had to abide by certain regulations through the HDC. This can be at times frustrating, but I realize those are there to preserve the historic nature and character of the neighborhood, which is wonderful, and it's one of the reasons I chose to live in this area. I rented on 5th Street for years. I desired to live on 6th Street. I jumped on the chance to buy a derelict building and restore that, and I'm doing so slowly out of my personal savings, right? So this is the case for many people here, even in this audience, who have put blood, sweat, tears, and savings. I don't see that being reflected tonight, and if we're discussing the nature of the demolition of a garage that you say has no historic, significance, then why do I, as a private resident, have to abide by the same rules for my, my fence repair or my window repair? Those don't necessarily have historic significance. Can you point to a specific event in history that resonates today, like the Liberty Bell or the reading of the Declaration of Independence down in the square? No, you probably can't. Then why do I have to abide by those restrictions? I just want to raise those points. I also want to reference that I have not been contacted one time, for the record, by the developer or any of their attorneys or any representatives regarding an easement, which will certainly be necessary for the use of Lurch Court, which was indeed abandoned by the city and therefore given, in some regard, ownership by the private residents. It's actually part of my deed now because I am responsible for that. So I want to highlight these tonight, and I also want to say, yes, we've indeed emphasized that there is an elephant in the room. Just by approving the demolition of this garage, you are, in a sense, opening the door with a clear precedent that you are going to allow, in a sense, a large project to go forth and be built in that lot. Mayor Panto, at the last meeting we had, you yourself said that you decried the fact that some of these lots are being consolidated by the HDC. The HDC allowed that. That's really not in keeping or character with the purpose that they serve within this community. So again, whether or not that garage has any historic events tied to it and whether or not you approve it still indicate, if you approve the demolition, it still indicates that you will likely go forth with the approval of some large structure. And let me remind you that there are plans that were clearly submitted to the city. They're in the office, I think a floor down or like a couple offices over, that show a 5-story building, including a underground parking garage with 29 parking spaces. How is that in keeping with the historic nature? I rest my case.
Okay.
Free go. I have one comment.
Sure.
This was my concern with having competing surveys.
Right.
So when you made your comment about surveys and that we're not going to rule,
Right.
This is what's going to make this matter much more complicated.
And I understand that concern. The problem is that the issue of the survey and whether or not that garage is wholly on the applicant's property or not is not a matter for council to consider. If it's not, I'm sorry, I'm not. All that's before the board is just the historical nature of the garage and whether or not to agree with the commission's recommendation. If a garage is encroaching on your property, ma'am, you have remedies at law to prevent someone from trespassing on your property or to, but this isn't the forum for that, right? It's just you have to pursue the proper legal remedies for that, and that's not a matter for this panel, or I'm sorry, I keep saying board and panel, for the council to consider. And in fact, if that's the issue that's decided on, that's probably an error that would be cause for reversal if the applicant appeals it, because it's not a legitimate concern within the ordinance.
Sir, I appreciate the clarification of that matter, and certainly I may explore those other avenues, but I'm sure you can understand, as a random citizen who just happened to be finding themselves in the midst of this, I had to start here, and
Yes.
I also, as I said, needed to emphasize to those present tonight that the demolition of this building is clearly tied to a structure that does not match the historic character of the neighborhood. And so I cannot fathom how to reconcile the city plans on file today regarding the lot next door and what is going in there and the demolition of this project, or the this garage. I can't reconcile the two as not matching up and relevant to
those
one
plans
another.
were not approved, right? I mean, I don't want to get too far down that road because that's explicitly what we're not supposed to be talking about today. But you'll have an opportunity to present your case in front of, and I think you have to go back to the HDC. Do you have to go back to Planning Commission as well?
We just have to go back to the HDC,
Okay.
but yes, we have to go back to the HDC on the actual project. Tonight, we are only here on
Right.
the garage.
And that, so you'll have an opportunity to speak in front of HDC, and then whatever HDC recommends, whether it's approval or disapproval of applicant's plan, that will have to come before City Council.
Sure,
and that is the time you can discuss that. I understand your issue with the garage, and I understand the financial burden that sometimes comes with litigation. Believe me, but I just want you to understand where you can properly raise those objections, those concerns.
Understood, thank you. And I thought it was still appropriate to emphasize the relevance, though. I don't think the matters, my point is I don't think the matters can be seen in a vacuum. Even though we have to abide between, certain boxes and avenues, I respect that, but I'm trying to at least state these things, even to get clarity in this moment.
Yes, and Ms. Buxton, you submitted of 2 pages, a photograph and a blow-up detail of a
My
survey.
land survey, yep,
Right, and did you hire Barry Isett for that survey?
correct.
Okay, and did you take this photograph?
No, that was a photo that was supplied to me by my surveyor, and I believe he's the owner, Kim Moore, so his name is referenced on that survey.
And
He drew the pink line on the photo.
he drew the pink line
Yep.
on the photo. Okay, but does this photograph, since you're the owner of the property, accurately represent the property? If someone were to view it today, is that an
Correct,
accurate
yes.
representation? Council, do you have objections to these being offered as exhibits?
I have no objection to the photograph. I do have a slight objection. And this is more for record purposes. I have an objection to the survey in that I don't believe Mr. Moore is actually here this evening to authenticate the survey. If I'm wrong, is Mr. Moore here tonight?
No, he is not, but I would love to contact him, and we can discuss that further if needed.
And I would also just like my objection as to the relevancy of the bulk of the testimony to be on the record as well.
I understand. I'm going to have the 2 documents marked as, we'll use your last name, Buxton 1. Is that acceptable?
Buxton? Yeah,
Yes, but
Buxton.
1, we have to put a number after every exhibit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, sure. Thank you.
Lawyers, we have to.
Yeah, no worries.
Terrible.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else, ma'am?
Nope, that's all.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you, folks.
Council, anyone have questions for this witness?
I do have one.
Sure.
That the wall that's shown on the picture, is that an actual part of the garage structure?
So
Or is it something that was just, outside of their garage structure, just a wall that's on your property?
Yeah, my understanding, via looking at the records on file with the city building department and seeing what the history of my property was, is that was a joint garage, and at one point, the side of the garage that existed on my property was taken down, and yet there's a footprint of the foundation there, so you can see, if you walk up to that structure now, there's a bit of a wall remaining, and then there's a full wall matching the height of the existing or the remaining garage on my neighbor's property that is joined. So that was my point earlier. I can't imagine a construction crew that's going to come in and tear down the garage without at least damaging that wall, which is why I emphasize I haven't been contacted about what will happen if that occurs or how they're going to prevent that damage.
Well, I'm certain that they would have to make you whole again if they damage a part of your property.
I would expect so.
Yeah, typically anybody who does work in I live in the West Ward, so
Oh, okay, yeah.
there's
Tight
lots
spaces.
of row houses and things like that, and occasionally they have to come down.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, they have to secure the buildings on either side as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Kira.
Thank you.
Okay. Next citizen witness, anyone else would care to speak to council? Certainly, sir.
I just request everyone that's here in this room about this matter to stand up.
I'm going to object.
The interest of the community, how many people that are here.
Hold on there, sir. Basis of the objection?
The basis of the objection is the number of people. Well, I appreciate the community has the right to speak on projects. I 100% appreciate that, and I don't want to minimize that. But introducing the number of people that are here tonight is not relevant to the one issue that is before the board, and that is whether this cinder block one-story garage has historical relevance to the historic district, and therefore to affirm the recommendation of the historic district for the certificate of appropriateness. So it's a relevancy objection, but I do think it's valid.
Okay, your objection is noted for the record. Quickly, please.
Precedence that we are here about. It's the precedence of finding something that's a cinder block garage is relevant. That's why we're all here.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there are no further witnesses from the member, ma'am? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Any other witnesses or any other testimony or questions from members of the public regarding the garage and the Historic District Commission's recommendation for demolition? Okay. Seeing none, council, any closing arguments?
In sum, you've heard from 3 individuals tonight: the owner of the property, a professional land surveyor, and an expert in architecture. And the issue before the board this evening is actually, despite the elephant in the room and despite all the noise around it, is really a pretty straightforward one. And that is, does this structure have historical significance? Your historic committee found that it didn't. Your historic committee recommended that it be demolished. You've seen pictures of it. It's a cinder block structure with aluminum siding on it along an alleyway. There was discussion about precedents. That's why we're here tonight. This is not a precedential issue. Matters come before the Historic Commission, and just because one garage is permitted for demolition doesn't mean another one was. If I came to you tonight and my argument in chief was the garage down the street you allowed to be demolished, I don't think I'd get very far with you. That's not what's before you. What is before you is this very garage, this singular garage, and whether it has historic significance. And I think we've met our burden tonight to establish that it does not have historic significance. That's all.
Thank you, counsel. Again, the standard, as Attorney Scheer stated at the beginning of the proceeding, the standard is that if the recommendation of the Historic District Commission was to approve the demolition of the structure. If council wishes to reject that recommendation of the commission, they would have to be able to state what changes in the plans and specifications, in this case probably would be non-demolition, would protect the distinctive historic character of the district and the architectural integrity of the building or the structure itself. So those are the standards that the council must meet if you're rejecting the commission's recommendation. I think at this point the testimony is on the record. I don't believe there's anything further that needs to go before council unless council has any questions. At this point, it's probably ready for a motion on the recommendation of the HDC.
We have to rule tonight?
Yes.
And we don't have HTC testimony in this packet, correct?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Isn't the
Packet?
It's Mr. Martinson's application followed by the minutes of the
A3.
meeting.
Or is it? So it's not our packet though, correct?
All the backup was sent to you guys
Yeah, it was in
separately from the
separate email.
backup.
Yeah. That's where I printed this from,
Last week?
last Friday.
And then in the packet was the actual certificate of appropriateness and the HDC comments and the notice of order from the court. But the backup was sent separately.
I have it.
Okay.
Any comments from city council?
Can we ask another question?
Sure, you can ask all the questions you want, Dr.
Yeah,
Ruggles.
Mr. Knoll, can I ask you on your survey? From,
I'm sorry, I think if the testimony was closed,
oh, okay.
then it's closed and it's up
Oh,
to
the
deliberation.
testimony was closed?
I thought so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Did you?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know you did, but I think these are questions coming from council. I thought, okay.
I mean, if you want to, I guess you could
I'm at
if
a
you want to
loss.
reopen it, because you really haven't started deliberations and nobody's made a motion, I don't think there's any prejudice to doing so.
That's okay. Don't worry.
No? Okay. Any comments about the resolution that should be passed or denied? Is that better?
If there is no other testimony the council is looking to take on, then it's appropriate to ask for a motion whether to accept the recommendation of the HDC or to deny it. And if it's going to be denied, there should be deliberation that gives some reasoning so that we can put together an adjudication to indicate, because this is a disapproval. We're supposed to give written reasons to the code administrator, the applicant, the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. So and the areas they're talking about, disapproval shall indicate what changes in the plans and specifications would meet the conditions for protecting the distinctive historical character of the district or the architectural integrity of the building or structure. So,
I'm going to go first. I'll take the privilege of the chair.
did you want to make a motion?
No, I'm going to make a motion, but I'm going to clarify that motion by saying to the developer, Monty, I find no historical significance in this building. I really don't. But I'm thinking of the elephant, and I just want you to know that I may be voting for the demolition tonight, but I am going to be very, very hard on your development that comes before us. Mr. Martinson is a very good architect who has done some great things on projects that haven't come to fruition because they just didn't pan out. I love what he did with the Santander building. I still wish that would have gone through, but I've been having a problem with the Planning Commission consolidating lots. And there's out on Wood Avenue and 13th Street, they've put together, Radio Works has put together 5 parcels. And he's going to come in with a 5-story building, which is allowed by our zoning ordinance, and everybody's going to be up in arms. Where to stop that was when we allowed the consolidation of those lots. I really believe that what I knew as Dutchtown Gallows Hill has become a wonderful neighborhood. I go to the State Cafe, and Roger and I are there on Mondays, and we just see what's going on there. It's wonderful. The preservation of those homes, and it's a great neighborhood that I spent a lot of time in as a kid. So I'm going to move that we uphold the decision of the Historic District Commission. But I'm on record that when you come back, you better go to the HDC with something new, because I'm going to be very, very cautious in my approval when it comes to us again. And I'm begging you to see what's going on in our city and follow that historic character of that neighborhood. I get blamed a lot for development in the city, and this is one time that I get to vote. I actually get to vote. I'm not the planning commission, I'm not the zoning board, and we are not the, unlike the suburbs where the townships do vote on all the projects, we don't vote. But here's a situation, because it went to the Historic District Commission, we do have to approve or deny their recommendation. So I will move that we approve the recommendation from the Historic District Commission, and then the resolution that Ms. Mesa has already prepared, it'd be the one that approving it, and that's what I will enter into for a vote if I have a second. Thanks, Mr. Shear.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
I like the mayor. I'm not in favor of that project in that neighborhood. You know, I agree with the residents there that the scale is just off for what that neighborhood, the character of that neighborhood, in my opinion. But that said, I didn't find any testimony that would refute what the Historic Commission has given to us, and for that reason, I'm going to have to vote in favor.
Okay, so no other discussion? Call the question.
Okay. So Mayor Panto is introducing a resolution to approve or accept and approve the recommendation of the Historic District Commission and issue a certificate of appropriateness to be issued for the demolition of a garage located at 34-42 South Sixth Street.
Second.
Mr. O'Connell,
No.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana,
No.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan.
No.
Okay. But the vote is what, is that, do I think it was 4-3?
The vote is 4-3.
Okay, recommending the approval of the acceptance of the Historic District Commission. I see we have one commissioner here. Your name's here. Your name's here. I saw your name in the minutes. Okay, moving on. We go now to, go ahead, Dr.
Are
Ruggles.
we off the record now?
Yes, we're off the testimony is closed completely. The hearing is closed.
Mayor, I have to ask the stenographer one question.
Go ahead, you do. Dr. Ruggles wants to make.
I just wanted to say something before everybody left, okay? I wanted to announce that on April 30th, we're having a community breakfast. And I would love for everybody to be there. It's from 9 to 11 at St. John's, which is right behind here, okay? And it's just for you to get together and talk to your neighbors, okay? So April 30th from 9 to 11. So thank you for letting me.
The mayor's cooking.
Yeah, don't tell them that, they won't show up. They know I'm cooking.
That's why he
Okay, we're on the public comment on agenda items only. On the agenda tonight are several things that I see some people that may be here to speak about, including the outdoor dining. I did meet with restaurant owners last week. We do have a recommendation before City Council that is just a draft. And Mr. Kingsley is here also to address that. So you had something that you wanted to say?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Jones. I am a business owner here at 230 Ferry Street in Easton and also a resident in Easton. So I pay double the rent to be here. But I'm here about the parking situation. As Sal and I have had some banter. It was fun. But we talk about parking in Easton, which is a big issue, and kind of tying into the developing issues that everybody has, the elephant in the room that everybody talks about. One thing I want to make a quick statement is someone who's been born and raised in Easton. I've worked in Easton most of my life. I now am a resident and a business owner in Easton. I very much care about this city. And I am concerned about the overdevelopment. I love that there's development going on, but we do have to remember why people love Easton. And it is because of people like myself and other small business owners that put the time and love and character into the city. And when you come with big buildings and big fancy stuff, it kind of kills that. And I hate talking publicly, so sorry, I'm nervous.
Doing great, yeah, Jessica.
But as just one of my concerns as a business owner on Ferry Street is the parklet situation. As a regular restaurant patron of all of the restaurants in Easton, and I'm even friends with them, I know, is it true that they all are supposedly allowed 2 parklets per restaurant? Am I correct on that?
2 spaces, that's in the current recommendation.
But on Ferry Street, we have 3 restaurants with 3 parklets each, which then takes away extra parking spots for my business, which poses a problem this past year. So I wanted to just propose the consideration of other business owners and parking. You know, when I have a 65-year-old woman, she doesn't necessarily want to park in a dark garage and walk home at night. You know, things like that need to be considered. Maybe the 2 parklets is enough. If we're being honest, I think that's sufficient when they already have outdoor dining, you know, set up as well as the parklets. I think we can call that even. I don't have the opportunity to apparently buy a space for my business, and I just wanted to ask for that consideration for other businesses like myself that pay and work and pay our, you know, for our licenses and all the coding and zoning and all the things I had to pay for to be here. I just want the same respect as other business owners in the area, and that's it. So thanks. All right.
Thank you, and that is on the topic tonight, so if there's anyone else who'd like to talk to outdoor dining, it is on the agenda.
I'm going to finish off by saying, whoa. It's not about being anti the parklets. I like the parklets. I just feel like we should be equal in the fact of all restaurants having two, that's enough, you know? So it's not that I'm anti having the parklets or against the parklets. I just want to clarify that, you know, some shouldn't get extra and doesn't matter if they're paying more or whatever. That was.
So you want to limit it to two?
Well, it was two. It was actually approved for two from what my understanding. But
No,
that
last
people
year
were
we
paying
approved-
additional to add a third.
There is in the recommendation allowing them to go to a third if approved.
Correct. But
If approved.
My asking is that you don't approve it.
Okay.
Because that would just solve the problem and
Okay.
help other businesses have their equal, you know, we already have limited space on this side, you know, I live on Fifth Street on this side of town, the parking side, as we all know, the parking is already limited for people like myself.
Sure.
As a whole. So even my house, you know, sometimes I have to drive around the block 2 times to come home with my groceries, and that's in itself very frustrating, which is partly why I'm here about the other issue as well, because I do support the concerns about the other issue. Living on Fifth Street, I also have to worry about all the developments. There's several developments going on that's not in question tonight, and there's already a limited parking issue on our street. And with the snow, that big snow we had last year, there was major issues with people fighting about parking spots and stuff like that. So it's just something to really consider that, you know, people like myself that live here and work here and pay rent to other businesses and stuff like that, that we just ask that the fair share of parking spaces that we already have a limited amount of parking spaces. So that's it. Anyway, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's good input. We appreciate that. We want to hear from both sides, so.
Troy, can you hold on just a second? I was going to have John come up.
Well, we're under public comment right now.
Well, I was just wondering if you wanted to take care of the whole thing right now.
We can't vote on it.
We can't vote until it's
All right,
at the
okay.
agenda,
Well, how,
but we could certainly bring John up first and
Yeah.
let John go over it.
you want to do that?
Okay, John,
John.
you're up.
Thank you, Mayor.
No problem.
Good evening, John Kingsley, 123 South 3rd Street. Yeah, I mean, by way of background, this is our 3rd year going into the outdoor dining program. So this actually started with the mayor's business recovery plan, which was an outgrowth of the CARES Act funding that we received from HUD 2 years ago. We're entering our 3rd year. There's not a lot that we're looking at changing within the program. Actually, I would say that's confined to about 5 things. First of all, we're going to introduce new barriers this year that will actually kind of adorn the parking spaces and give them a better aesthetic. We also will see some impact in the southeast quadrant, you know, as it relates to the construction of Center Square. So we need to take that into account in terms of the availability of the program there. It will probably be at least, you know, interrupted for a period of time during the construction of the southeast quadrant into more of a plaza format. So, you know, those businesses that may choose to participate in the southeast quadrant, they just need to be aware of that. We are proposing a fee structure this year, and we did last year. Council chose actually to take the fee structure out of it and to make this free as a continued business recovery program. And I can go over the fee structure. I'll do that in just a minute. The other thing about the program that is changing, we are going to market the program as an ongoing program of the city to try to attract additional, you know, activity into the downtown to utilize the outdoor eateries. We're actually branding the program. It will be called Easton Al Fresco, and you'll start seeing, you know, some marketing pieces to that effect, and there will even be a logo developed around it, which will also appear on the wall coverings that we'll put on top of the barriers to give them a better aesthetic. So other than that, there's not an awful lot changing. So just to give you an overview of the fee structure that we're proposing, it would be for food, for those serving food but not alcoholic beverages, it would be $500 for the 2 spaces, with again a 3rd space based on a case-by-case evaluation that would be provided at an additional $250. For those who are going to serve alcoholic beverages, it it would be a $750 fee for the same 2 spaces. And again, an additional space on a case-by-case basis could be provided that would be offered at $250 for the term of the entirety of the program. The program is expected to run from May 7th through October 30th. And applications will open April 4th and the application round will conclude the 29th. So that is what we're proposing this year. I'm glad to go over the entirety of the program if you'd like me to, but I figure this has been through 2 iterations before City Council previously. Perhaps I don't need to go through that process, but I'll gladly do it if you'd like me to.
Thank you, John. Any questions from council for Mr. Kinglesy?
I don't have, I mean, I would just say, I would be more in favor of the ones serving alcohol if they go for a third space to get to charge them half of what the original fee was, just like we do for those who are not serving alcohol.
Okay.
So instead of $250,
It would be $375. Sure, got it. Certainly can add that if council so chooses.
We have to make, I'm making amendments anyway to it, so we'll wait to get to the actual resolution.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions I can answer at this point? Okay.
Anyone from the public want to address the outdoor dining? Troy?
Troy Reynard, 1815 Ironwood Drive, owner of Two Rivers Brewing Company at 542 Northampton Street.
Could you spell your last name? I'm sorry.
Reynard.
Thank you.
I'm just here to speak in support of the outdoor dining. The pandemic hit restaurants really hard without being able to have guests inside. And outdoor dining was something that was a lifeline for us. I don't know if all of the restaurants that did survive the pandemic would have without the outdoor dining program. So, I mean, first of all, I want to thank council and the mayor and the mayor's staff because they were fantastic about the outdoor dining program. And I'd encourage you to pass this year's outdoor dining program. And as you think of the fees, I like the fee structure that John presented. And I don't think that would be too much of a burden to us, but to increase those fees anymore, we're finally getting our footing again, and now everything's more expensive. Fuel surcharges on stuff that we have delivered are more. As a brewery, a lot of grain comes out of the Ukraine, which isn't going to make it here. So all those prices keep going up and up. And if this goes up more than what's proposed, it would be a hardship for us. So I thank you guys for your consideration and continued support as a business owner in the downtown.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thanks, Troy.
Come on up, Roseanne.
Good evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Roseanne Joseph, and I'm an attorney here in Easton. My offices are the Santander Bank Building, Suite 501. I'm here on behalf of the infamous Josie Corey of Josie's Deli. And what I'm hearing tonight, and I've heard it before from Mr. Kingsley, is that the Southeast Quadrant is going not to have the outdoor dining during a certain period of time. And we don't know how long that's going to be. Nobody can anticipate that. First of all, Josie is in favor of whatever the city wants to do. She's a team player. So if you're doing the outdoor dining, she goes with it. She likes it. What would happen, though, during that period where that outdoor dining for her is disrupted? I don't know if there's alternate plans. Like, where there'd be alternate,
She still would have the sidewalk.
Yes.
But would she have any parking spaces, other places, since you're going to
During construction, I don't know how that's going to exactly impact it. Dave,
That's going to be a different animal down there, right?
I cannot express to you exactly how that's going to affect parking. I will tell you it is going to temporarily end
John, could you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't speak to exactly how it's going to affect the parking spaces that are going to be restructured in the quadrant. Dave was here. He unfortunately had to leave, but I can say it's going to discontinue the outdoor dining program for the period while the southeast quadrant is being reconstructed. So there's no question it's going to have an impact on that. I guess estimates at this point are a month or more. That we would see that.
And what period are we talking about? Like,
I can't speak to the exact timing of when that work is going to be done. I don't know that Dave can tell you the exact timing at this point.
Last night, he gave a presentation, and he said that it has been delayed because of supply line issues. And so, I mean, that's our major issue is we're not sure how quickly we're going to get supplies in. So they had a schedule, but they are behind because of supply lines, is what he told us last night.
Roseanne, why don't we do this, if it's okay with you? Give the clerk your telephone number, and we'll have Mr. Hopkins give you a call tomorrow, and you guys can discuss it.
okay.
Yeah, so obviously, we don't have the answers.
Right.
He left, so if you want to give the clerk your telephone number, we'll reach
I don't
out
think
tomorrow.
he does either, so.
Well, you get a better understanding of where we're
Well,
going.
Yeah.
just to say, I mean, it's nice if it starts, but then the patrons will get used to that. And Josie is distinct in many ways, but one of the way her business is, she's the only one really that has that pick up and go business. Those are restaurants, those are bars. She doesn't. So the availability in front of the place is going to be important. So that's why she'll have those parking spaces. But once you take those away, she not only doesn't have the outdoor, she also doesn't have the parking spaces for people to come and go. So she's unique in that respect. I thought there was a 15-minute parking space there, not now, but there's not. It's a handicapped parking space.
Right. When we do change that quadrant, it'll be just like the Crayola quadrant without the angle parking. There's the parking on the circle itself, and I think we're going to lose 5 spaces, but we will make, because of the kind of pick up and go business she is, we'll probably have 2 or 3 15-minute spots there.
That's
where it'll say 15-minute spots must have blinkers, so that when they go in, they can pick up their stuff and leave, so that we're not tying up that, we're turning over that every 10, 12 minutes.
That's very accommodating because she is unique in that.
Oh,
respect.
absolutely.
That's-
No.
That's really good.
We did the same thing down at Chow when they opened up. I mean, across the street, they have 2 15-minute spots.
Okay.
Again.
But I would like to talk to Mr. Hopkins about
Yeah, just
that.
give the clerk your telephone number, and he'll contact you tomorrow.
Just to see, once people get used to it.
Yep.
We want to see.
When is the expected opening? Can't wait.
Well, it's not going to be May 7th. I pushed for that because of the big happenings downtown, but they are working feverishly. You're going to be very pleased with the major, not minor, major renovations she's done and she's doing. But again, it's supply chain, people working,
yeah.
getting them all together, and that's the problem. But she's anxious to come back. Thank you.
Glad to have her back.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad to have her back is right.
Judge, I have to tell you, I'm sitting here watching you. Gosh, I'm getting flashbacks of your dad.
Right?
And it's a good flashback. But it is amazing. I'm looking at it saying, my God, that's Mr. Corey. Okay, anyone else would like to address City Council on anything dealing with the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Under the consent agenda, we have Bill number 3 that was introduced by Dr. Ruggles, which would amend Chapter 1, General Provisions of the Code of the City of Easton. We have Bill number 4 that was Bill number 3. Sorry, guys. It was Bill number 4, also introduced by Dr. Ruggles, which would amend Chapter 12, Authorities Municipal of the Code of the City of Easton. We had Bill number 5 that was introduced by Dr. Ruggles, which would amend Chapter 17, Bond of the Code of the City of Easton. And then we have certificates of appropriateness. For the first one is for 139, 141 Spring Garden Street. The second one for 526 Northampton, 158 Northampton, 185 South 3rd Street, 436 Northampton Street. We also have a resolution being introduced by, or would be introduced by Mr. Ettinger, approving a contract between the City of Easton and the YMCA to manage the city's pools, both Eddyside and Hyle Park, for the 2022 swim season. And we also have a resolution that would have been introduced by Mr. Ettinger, approving a contract with the Tour of Somerville. It's the bicycle race that comes through town, which will happen on May 28th, 2022.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved in second, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Sultana?
Aye.
And Mayor Panto.
Aye. I'll accept the fire report for February. Moving on to reports of the committees, Finance Committee, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I have this evening nothing to pass this evening. It's only introducing the legislation for amending the general fund, and also Mark will be giving us an update this evening. And I just want to say publicly, thank council for their patience with me this year as I was going through the tournament that took me a little bit deeper this year. So I appreciate you allowing me to be absent, but I did catch all the meetings that I missed online. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown and council. Good evening. As I believe you were recently made aware, our longstanding auditors, Palmer and Company, recently informed us that they will not be able to perform our 2021 audit due to unforeseen circumstances within their firm. From a personal perspective, this was sad news, as Palmer and Company have been a great partner over the last 5 years that I've been here, and they've always provided solid reporting, and we're always willing to serve as a sounding board for any accounting issues that we may have, any questions, and so we'll obviously miss them. From a professional perspective, my team and I have had to shift gears to not only find a new audit firm, but to also ensure that we have everything together for that firm when their engagement team is deployed. For those that are not familiar with the auditing process, an auditor will typically, in our case specifically, send a team of 2 to 4 auditors on site to do field work and collect information. They'll then bring that back to their offices and process it over the next several weeks. And during that time, they will very often have follow-up questions that'll be directed to our team. We'll have to provide answers, provide additional documentation, et cetera, et cetera. So going back to the replacement, we've had discussions with 3 audit firms so far, and we have another one tomorrow morning. Of those, there are 2 promising candidates that I think are strong contenders to replace Palmer and Company. I hope to share the final selection with council in the coming weeks. And obviously the selection and signing of the contract will speed up the clock for us to close the books for 2021 and getting them in shape for the new firm to take those. With that, I'd like to provide a quick update on where things stand at this time. To start, the majority of our expenses for 21 have already been booked outside of a few known entries for transfers, things like allocations to the sewer services fund, the MS4 parking fund, where we net out expenses and send money back to the general fund, and the like. Next, we are in the process currently of confirming any outstanding revenues, as our goal is always to tie back to the cash entries and cash balances that we have at the bank. We've set a target date for mid-April to close out 2021 and provide, we would then follow that up with providing council with Q1 results the following month. In all honesty, the last several months, 6 to 9, maybe more, have been a painful learning experience, but on the plus side, it's given us a chance to understand and highlight areas for improvement. And this helped us to refine our book close processes and make adjustments to allow for a more timely close, including such things as implementing daily entries for many of our transactions, which in the past and historically had been booked at month end. So with that, I will thank you and ask for any questions if there are.
You said you're going to, mid-April, you're going to give us Q1 figures?
No, in mid-April, we plan to have 2021 ready to go so that we can turn that over to the auditors and have them started on the 2021 audit. That process, depending on who we go with, can take between 6 to 10 weeks.
So when will you notify us about what the results were with the numbers?
at that time, we could provide preliminary results. And then the following month, we would be providing Q1 of 2022
So
results.
May,
Correct.
but they wouldn't be preliminary though, correct?
Correct. 2022 would not be preliminary.
Or 2021 would be preliminary.
Well, 2021 would be preliminary only in so much as the audit hasn't been completed, so there may be some
Well, the
adjusting.
audit last year took how many months?
Too many.
So you see my concern, right? We don't get notified of financials on a timely basis. Is that going to change this year?
That is the plan, yes.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to this every month from now on.
Okay.
We can't operate as a legislative body without information.
Understood.
So you're saying it's going to be here next month. First meeting or second meeting in April?
Second.
Okay.
That's the old format that we had prior to that.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Brown?
Questions for anybody else? Concerns?
Oh, was that me or you? Okay.
No, Mayor, that's fine.
Okay, moving on. I don't know what happened to my agenda. Economic development. Mrs. Sultana?
That's David.
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry, David, yeah.
I don't have a report,
Sorry.
Mayor, but under new business, I will be moving a resolution approving the 2022 outdoor dining guidelines.
Okay. Agenda. There you go. Thank you, sir. Planning and Code Committee, Mrs. Sultana.
No report.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Dr. Ruggles.
Sorry, Chief, we picked the wrong night.
He's gonna remember that.
I'm going to turn it over to Chief Scalzo. He and I have had some discussions on or how we might be able to get a little bit better understanding of the police department. And he's here tonight to kind of start us off and overview what might be in the future here. So go ahead, Chief.
That's correct.
Go ahead, too.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm going to kind of try to keep this short. I know it's been a long meeting with the hearing and all, but so basically what we're going to try to attempt to do in discussions with Dr. Ruggles and how we were going to approach, we give a yearly report which has all the numbers of the department, goals, expectations, accomplishments, those types of things. We're going to try to have a little bit more communication in an interest of transparency where we can communicate a little bit better with council, with the citizens, and kind of put our best foot forward as far as the things that we're doing month by month. I don't think a written report as far as numbers go would really serve the purpose where I would just turn over a report and say, we had this many, types of crimes and things like that. I think that's better served on a yearly basis. But I do think there are a lot of things that we would like to sit up here and try to communicate to not only you, but again, the citizens. So the plan moving forward is going to be the second meeting of every month. And again, that's not necessarily in stone, depending on maybe what a hearing may or what a council meeting may have in its agenda. We may move that. But the plan would be the second meeting of every month to have myself and then a member of my command staff, maybe a sergeant, a lieutenant, or a captain, come with me to the meeting, depending on their level of expertise or their area of operation, or responsibility. Come with me to that meeting. And then our plan would be to basically discuss things that we're doing in the department, I guess more relevant to the timeliness of when they're occurring. Some examples of that would be April the 9th, we're giving our written test and for the new hiring. So I would have Captain Hernkane, who is kind of heading that project, come talk to you about what we've done in reaching out to minority communities, talk to you about what we're doing as far as applications and getting people to show interest in our department, and talk about new hires and things to that effect. Where we could talk about we just hired 3 new officers, the diversity of the department and where we stand in those regards, which would again I think give you guys a good opportunity, excuse me, to discuss with us the things that we're doing and offer any concerns or input that you may have in reference to it. We also have our accreditation coming up here next month, so we would bring Lieutenant Regan with us, who is the Lieutenant of Professional Standards. He would discuss with you the accreditation process. What we did, this actual accreditation will be our 5th, believe it or not, which puts us in a very unique category where we would be, it's our 15th year as an accredited department, which would put us into what they call premier status, which is a phenomenal accomplishment for sure. And I would have him come up here and he could speak to you in reference to, what that entails and what we've done to accomplish those things. So as we go through the months, every month you'll see me here, which will give a good opportunity for any questions or concerns that you may have or may want to ask me in reference to any matter. And then you'll also get a chance to have our captains and other command staff in front of you, where you get a chance to meet them, discuss with them the things that they do. I think it builds a much better, like I said, much better transparency with our department and levels of communication with all of you and with the citizens who may have any questions for the department as well. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. So you will have in front of you Lieutenant Gerold to talk about SRU and CID procedures. You'll have potentially Captain Chris Foley to talk about use of force, which is probably going to be next month, where he's going to discuss where our levels. We have really good software that tracks every use of force. We do investigations on every use of force over routine handcuffing. So we track all of that. And he'll be able to present to you some of the findings in reference to how much force we're using, what levels. We're really proud of our de-escalation techniques and training and things that we do to keep those use of force levels low. So that will give a good opportunity for him to discuss that with you in all the detail I think that you would want. Won't take away from our year-end report. You'll still get that, which I submitted to all of you. You'll still get that every year. That'll have all that great detail in reference to crime stats and trends and goals, accomplishments, training, all of those things. But again, it would be nice to have, for instance, Lieutenant Bonham come and speak to you about the training that our department does, whether it be bias training, anti-bias training, or training for officer safety, virtual training in reference to a scenario-based type training. He'll be able to come and speak to you a little bit more in depth about those things. So without taking up a lot of your time every month, we'll still be able to kind of put somebody in front of you to give you that information. That was the plan as me and Dr. Ruggles have kind of thought it through in our mind. And then, like I said, we can go through with any questions or concerns. Also, if you at any point in time decide that, hey, there's something that you'd really like to hear from our department, do not hesitate to shoot me a text, give me a call. Everybody has my phone number. Please give me a call, text, email, whatever it would be, and I can make arrangements to have that individual, whoever's responsible for what it is you're looking for, come with me to the meeting and present that to you. So I think it's a good way to kind of, again, just increase that communication with not only myself and council, but also with the rest of the department. So that's the plan moving forward. Tonight I was just going to talk a little bit about, not necessarily the entire year-end report that I submitted, but I did want to speak just a little bit about the crime stats. I know the mayor has, I usually wait till after the mayor is done with the state of the city. But again, we're extremely thrilled with where we see the department heading as far as it pertains to crime stats. Going back, obviously, I'm in my 11th year now as chief, which seems almost surreal to me when I say that, but I'm in my 11th year as chief, and if you go back 11 years, we were just over 1,000, about 1,078 or so Part 1 UCRs, which is your violent crime here in the city. And over the course of the 10 years, we've seen that number drop to 423 this past year. That dropped to me, again, in a city environment, especially one that's seated between Philadelphia, New York, Newark, and all of these major cities. It's a fantastic accomplishment. And as I stand here, I take very little credit for that accomplishment because it really is the men and women of the department who are out there on the front lines every day doing the job who deserve the lion's share of that credit. We have really good officers, really good investigators. Our specialty units are second to none. And I'm extremely proud of the department and all that they've done to see that number fall. But I also did want to take a moment to tell you that there is no doubt in my mind that the success of this past year and the past couple years, as we've continued to see crime fall in the city, that success is predicated by the support that not only you, City Council, Mr. Mayor, City Administration has given our department in a time when many cities were turning away from policing and turning away from starting to reduce funding, reduce training, reduce those types of things in an effort to somehow sort of figure out a path forward. This city, this administration, this council never did. You guys supported us 110%. It was observed by myself, but by every member of our department. And I think it allowed us to have the confidence to move forward and continue to basically do the job that needs to be done in a proactive manner. Now, again, our end of the bargain is to make sure that we're always doing the job the right way. And so that is always my promise to you, that we will do it the right way, but your support has been invaluable in all of that. So to say thank you is, again, it's something where, obviously the professional relationship that we have, but on a personal level, I do really appreciate it because it does show a level of confidence in us in a department where, again, I think the fact that you see those numbers fall, where in many cities you've seen them rise, in the city of Easton, you've seen them fall. And I think it's really a testament to that our officers are confident to go out there and do the job. They know we're doing it the right way. They treat everybody with respect. They do it professionally. They're well-trained. They're well-equipped. But I think that's the key to the success of the city. And we're going to continue to do that. And again, it's my promise, as long as I'm chief of this department, that our officers will always do things the right way. And all that we ever ask in return is the support that you've shown us. And so we're really grateful for all of that. One other thing I would point out before I step away from the mic here is that as I look back over the numbers, and there's a graph that I know that everybody sees the graph that shows us the actual fall in crime. And I'll just kind of hold it up here so you can, this graph here. So when you look at this graph, you can obviously, it's a great graph that we love, the mayor displays, and when he does the state of the city, that shows a great drop in crime over the course of the years. But the one thing that has always stood out to me is that if you look back to right around 2007, we were at 1,700 Part 1 UCRs. And again, if I didn't clarify, that's your violent crimes, your homicides, rapes, robberies, assaults. And in 2006, we were at 1,713. And the one thing that occurred there in 2007 was that was the year that we got accredited as a department. In 2007, July of 2007, we were accredited as a police agency. And we've seen this trend of crime dropping ever since that date, from 1713 down to 423. So I personally contribute, again, without any, definitive explanation as to why. I do think that doing things the right way, I think accountability, I think policies, procedures, and all the things that we did through the accreditation process has definitely led the department and the city in the direction that we've headed. And I think that it bears itself out as you look at this graph. I just don't think it's a coincidence. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, into making a city great, to making a department have success, and we're just really fortunate here in the city to have all of those things come together. Does anybody have any questions of me, not only of where we are crime stat-wise? I would say I'm not obtuse or blind to the fact that we just did have a homicide about a week and a half ago. And although I can't, or we as a department can't stop every crime from occurring, when you have a motivated individual who has a weapon and those types of things, it's challenging. We did have an officer in this instance literally right around the corner when it happened. We just can't stop every crime. But as a department, what we do is we ensure that we solve those crimes quickly. And that's what we did in this instance. Obviously, we're still working on it, still investigating. But within a week and a half, we had a suspect identified. That suspect is now in custody. And that's really, I think, the message that we have is if we can't stop the crime from occurring, which we're always trying to do, if a crime does occur, we're going to solve it as quick as possible with really some of the most diligent, professional, experienced investigators that I think anywhere in the state, if not the country. I think we really have just such a great group of officers and investigators. So they just do an absolutely great job. So that's really what we tried to accomplish. We solve it quick so that individuals know if you're going to commit a crime in the city, then expect to be caught and held accountable for those crimes. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're going to continue to work on that. There's not a lot I can say in reference to the investigation other than what's already out there, but I can tell you that the guys are continuing and the officers are continuing to work on that investigation, and will not stop until it's all brought to fruition and every person is held accountable that needs to be. Any questions for me?
Thank you very much.
So we'll see you next month. And like I said, if anybody has anything that they do want to hear or do want, information on, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Public Works Committee, Mr. Councilman Eidinger.
The Public Works Committee met last night, and Director Hopkins gave us updates on all the capital projects that are ongoing. As we referenced tonight earlier, I think Dr. Ruggles, that we're experiencing some delays in supply chain, but for the most part, we seem to be pretty close to hitting our targets.
Administration Committee, Councilman Milan.
I have no report, Mayor.
City Solicitor, Mr. Shear.
Thank you. I want to dovetail or put suspenders on the last executive session we had. When we concluded the last meeting, It was announced that we were going into executive session, so I just want to announce again tonight that at the conclusion of the last city council meeting, we had an executive session to discuss an issue dealing with real estate leasing. Mr. Brown's comment, I just was trying to picture myself at a basketball game in a high school with the video screen streaming our city council meetings so you could watch it. It was a difficult image to get in my head.
I did see you say something about the executive session. I'm going to lose the next day.
Yeah, well, and with the music they play in those stadiums today, I'm sure it went really well. The one observation that I do want to share, because the mayor, pointed out that things happen like in the planning commission, and I do want to recognize that I see in attendance tonight is Dr. Ken Green, who's our new chairman. I mean, I sat with Chad Elliott for decades there, and the guy was an absolute gift. But I am really impressed how Dr. Ken Green is leading that planning commission and running those meetings, and we're all very fortunate. But I also would invite the members of City Council to come there. Mr. O'Connell, when he was chair of the Planning and Code Committee, attended most of those meetings. This is the gateway. Those are the meetings, as the mayor indicated, those are the meetings where you find out whether projects are going to be approved or not. It's only a matter of, it's just a fluke if it's in the historic district. You push down beyond those borders, and the city council may have absolutely zero involvement whatsoever of looking at the project until you get the neighbors showing up here after the project has passed. And I mean, same thing's true with the HDC. This project is going to go before the Historic District Commission. Now, you ultimately, it is so strange, Wade. That is the one place that the final decision is up to you. And unless we restructured and everyone was prepared to spend an extra 3 hours here and increase the rates of every applicant so that we have a stenographer, we really rely on the recommendations of that commission. But that's why it's a good place to observe, and it's a good place to participate in the dialogue, because you have to keep in mind that the whole purpose of that ordinance was not to deny people the ability to develop, but to educate them and encourage them to develop within the guidelines that we've set for the historic district. So I just wanted to sort of encourage council members to catch these developments and projects early. I don't know if you all get notice of the packets of the Planning Commission. I know you used to, Mr. O'Connell. But I don't know if all council members are copied, because if they're not, I would recommend that Carl Mangus, who's our zoning planner, send out the packets so people are aware of the projects that will get their final approval on land development. It's only going to go another step if it needs zoning approval. And a lot of developers are smart enough to know that they'll put a plan together as of right, so they don't need any zoning approval. So that's the conclusion of my report.
Carl just sent them to me, by the way, Joel.
Just to you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good. Remember, this is the public doesn't know about these projects that are going on the agenda unless they decide to monitor what's on the agenda, because we used to rely on newspapers. I mean, I haven't turned my back to see if anyone was here from
You're watching it on
that's right.
monitor.
The newspapers used to have enough staff. It's not the current reporter's fault. They'll have one reporter that's supposed to cover 25 municipalities. It used to be we had an Easton beat reporter who looked at everything, and there wasn't a project that didn't have a newspaper story before the Planning Commission would ever hear it. And it was a great way for the public to get involved. Now you have to really work, but I'm just suggesting that it's something that's good for all the city council members to see what's on the agenda. And if anything looks in the slightest bit of interest, I certainly encourage you to attend. And I mean, I know I've seen the mayor there, but I really never see anybody else there. Again, that's the conclusion of my report tonight.
Thank you.
Joel, just a minute. Wait, are planning commissions meeting, are those advertised in the paper like the zoning hearing
Yeah,
board?
they're advertised in this fashion, as far as I know. They're advertised in the beginning of the year. These are the meetings
Yeah.
that we have,
Okay.
period.
They meet the same meeting, same time every month.
And so you'd have to go online, and there should be an agenda issued, but the problem with agendas being put on record, you only have to put it on 24 hours beforehand. You know, it really requires an awful lot of vigilance to really be on top of that. But we know they're supposed to meet the first Wednesday of every month until April, March, when they had to postpone it because of some staffing issues, and they moved it to this past a week ago when I was over at the Pelras conference. So that's I didn't get the pleasure of seeing what happened last week.
Well, I always look at the first Monday because I know the zoning hearing board.
So
and
it's
all
third,
the
usually the
cases.
third Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, but they advertise
Oh,
it
that's right. Yeah.
on that first Monday, so at least I know what
It's
projects are going to be before them. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I think with the municipality's planning code requires notification before on zoning matters. No requirements of notice to neighbors or anything for planning commission matters.
But we can change that though.
We did it voluntarily for over a decade at my suggestion.
Right?
Yes.
So we can change it again then.
We just do it as all we have to do is a matter of policy. And I don't know what was passed. The mayor, when we had this case here 3-4 months ago, the comment was made that we're going to have those
Planning committee.
notifications going on. I do not know if it's been implemented or not.
Well, it's real simple. Either we create an ordinance or we make a policy. It's really
Yeah.
simple.
And we did it by policy before.
Okay, we can do an ordinance too, and then just
Well,
we can.
yeah. If we
The only thing is,
we screw up in the
you
ordinance,
gotta come up with a price, because the mailing is expensive.
Yeah.
So if you do it by email, they have to you don't know who they are.
No.
I mean, if everybody on 6th Street, we know who they are now, and then some of the emails I actually have. But if you're doing a project on 14th Street, how do we not have it? So you gotta send it out by mail.
when we did it by notice,
Zoning is chart in the application fee is money to cover the
Right.
mailing.
that's right. But we do it with the Board of Health.
Yeah.
I mean, and that again was by
But they charge $150 to be there, to get there.
To the Board of Health?
The application. The application's $150.
For what?
And it covers for handicap.
the parking.
50.
$50. I'm saying $150. $50, and it covers, basically it covers our costs.
So what's the planning commission application in?
Oh, that's a planning review. I have no idea.
It's
Because
based
we have staff reviewing the plans.
So is there a fee for it?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not sure why we can't just mail stuff out.
We'd have to add it to what we
Well, I
do
mean-
now is the plan review. It depends on the square footage,
It's
type.
$50 for a health license or handicap parking. Like,
Well, you could always,
I mean,
yeah, you have city council committees here. Whatever committee would be appropriate to discuss, whether it's planning and code committee or another committee, you should talk about. It's not a bad topic to talk about.
it doesn't have to go to committee. Just make a decision.
Well, anyway, that is the conclusion of my report.
Thank you.
Joel, I have one
Third
question.
time you've
Third time.
quoted that, Joel, by the way.
But I have one question. You said at your executive session, you went over real estate leasing and what?
No, I may have
For
said
the past one.
Yes,
And a loan.
real estate leasing. I may have said leasing real estate.
Okay.
I may have done. It was the same thing.
Wasn't litigation too?
And there was litigation.
There was a passing comment on litigation. It wasn't the primary reason the meeting was called, though.
But it was mentioned.
It was mentioned, yes.
Okay.
But I didn't mention it now.
Okay, moving on, mayor's report. Just want to mention that the bike race, thank you for approving the contract with Tour Somerville. It is May 28th, which is earlier this year. The Tour of Somerville is normally on Memorial Day. It was postponed last year solely because of the COVID pandemic. And this year, we may be on our own, so we may end up having two. I'm not sure, but May 28th is the bike race. It was very successful last year, and we will have fireworks at the end of the bike races again at the Forks of Delaware.
How's the construction in the circle going to impact?
We'll make sure it's okay. I mean, they paved part of it last year for the bike race. So the Easton Criterium, Last night's meeting, I thank the council members who were here. I thought we had a great discussion. We spent about $10 million. I think the decision was made. You'll have a decision in 2 weeks, recommendation in 2 weeks rather, to purchase a $1.7 million tiller truck, which is for us old people is a hook and ladder truck for the fire department. There's also a potential for $600,000 in new radios for the fire department. And we got a DPW update on all the millions of dollars of public improvements that are going on in the city. I want to thank Councilmember Sultana for coming to National League of Cities last week. I thought it was very helpful. I learned a lot about ARPA and affordable housing programs that are being done throughout the country. I know she did too, so I appreciate the fact that she was there. Also, I'm very proud to announce that those that, we've been talking about the Nurture Nature Foundation moving down to the Easton Iron and Metal. We've just got word today that we are in the final round.
Final round.
Final round. Well,
Well
that's
well
still.
said, well
Hey,
said.
we're still in the good. We're in the hunt.
Well said.
We're in the hunt.
We're
in the hunt for a $4 million grant, and it would be really good to add that educational component to our tourism community and for all of our school districts. And Dr. Green being superintendent of one of those schools, we appreciate his support. We have a lot of support from the Jersey school districts. Just want to announce that our next meeting is at the Easton Area Community Center.
Yep.
And we'll make arrangements to be there. We'll get the word out that it's not at City Hall, but it is at the Easton Area Community Center, 9th and Washington Street. And I'll turn it over now to Louis.
Sure. Just real quickly, Mayor, you had mentioned this, and I think, well, no, you did not mention this, but Joel had mentioned this in passing. Last week, members of the administration attended the PELRAS conference, and that's the Labor Law and Employment Conference under the PML. In attendance was myself, as well as Captain Hernkane and Lieutenant Regan from the police department, as well as our head solicitor, Joel Shear. Topics discussed, and Jeremy, excuse me. Jeremy actually was a ranger, no pun intended. He drove back and forth. I think one day he did it twice. So that's a pretty steep commute. We reviewed items such as Act 111, attended ethics sessions, discussed policing in general, and as well as then had the opportunity to listen to head coach Franklin. That's the head coach for the Penn State football team. I thought it was a really good conference, and to be honest, it was a little refreshing going back to in-person meetings. I personally learned a lot, and Joel and I spent a lot of dashboard time, and on the way back, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We did review the notes of the conference. It was nonstop. That with NPR, Bloomberg, and then the occasional pit stop. All right.
Chief Scalzo and Captains Chris Foley were supposed to be there, but they stayed home because of this homicide.
That's right. Usually the directors alternate like every other year, for example, but it is a very good conference. It's the conference for employment and labor issues. Secondly, we discussed the EDA. There is this matter will come up for discussion regarding the MOA for AFSCME. So when that time comes, that's on the agenda tonight for approval. We can dig into that detail, but I do want to dovetail into the non-union benefits agreement, if you will, which is on council's agenda tonight. And what I want to point out specifically, and you could see the red line document and the changes that are made year over year. Some of the changes there pertain to the changes that are being made in the AFSCME contract. So I'll give you the examples here quickly. They have to deal with terminal pay for new hires. We will not be paying out sick pay anymore, and that's due to the fact that we're going to be offering a short-term disability. That came out of the AFSCME negotiations, so that was approved by the board, so to speak, and they see some benefit in that. But the trade-off is that there's no sick time payout at the end. There's in the agreement as well. There's opt-out payments if you do not want to participate in our healthcare plan. That was advised by our broker. So, for example, if you decide not to take the healthcare plan because you're going to jump onto your spouse's plan, that's a $1,500 credit that we would give back to the individual. Wellness, there's certain best practices that we're taking on the wellness plan, and these are very effective measures for helping increase wellness with our employee base. So the examples are we would give some sort of like a gift card, if you will, if you participate in watching short videos that talk about things like hypertension, diabetes, etc. Those are very prominent within our group as a whole. So we target on the issues that are prevalent in the city's healthcare system. And then we talked about short-term disability. The last piece is there's parental leave. So that was negotiated in the AFSCME contract, and it provides equal leave for